Hello, and welcome to the News from the Real World video podcast. Today's episode, Magic in the Workplace. Our first article digs a little deeper into what's going on in the world of magicians. Margo, why don't you tell us about it?
This article is called Why So Few Female Magicians. It is one of our editor picks for the week. So it's Ashley Fetters for writing for The Atlantic. She's found the statistics are a little hazy, murky, obscured by mirrors and smoke, but it seems like maybe only about 5% of magicians are female, which is a very low percentage you may have calculated using that. So she interviews some female magicians about why this might be. There are a couple possible reasons that have to do, maybe with geography or lifestyle and those sorts of things, and she gets some very different opinions from these magicians. Some of the things I found interesting, that there are places where there are way more female magicians, where there's a greater tradition of it. Lots of places in Asia, it's more socially acceptable for women to be magicians. Russia and the Ukraine have a lot of female magician performers. And one of the other things I thought was interesting is that not necessarily that there's a stigma against it, but just the assumptions people make that if you're a female magician, if you're on stage with a male magician, people assume you're the assistant, you're the lovely assistant, or that you're a prostitute. That was another story that someone told, that they just assumed she was a hooker. So, like you do, I guess. So how did these reasons seem to you? Did they seem to explain why that there were so few female magicians? Did it make the reasons make sense to you?
I think they made sense to, for the most part, they made sense to me, especially about the geography one actually made a lot of sense about how when, magicians started to become more of a, norm around in the entertainment business in the 1800s, it was all about secret societies and only men were allowed. And so women, and so that became a tradition that just continues to this day. And so I think that made a lot of sense. I did not agree with when they said it's like math and science, and more boys like math and science, so more boys are going to like the puzzle of magic.
Yeah, that was a bit...
Yeah, that was a little too much. But other than that, I think the reasons that they gave actually were really interesting and were pretty valid and made a lot of sense.
Yeah, or at least they explain why it's happened historically, and some of the obstacles that tend to still challenge the sort of gender balance in something like that. I mean, I think it's maybe similar to comedy, like stand-up comedy. Mm-hmm. There are also very few females, and it's a similar sort of profession where you're touring a lot, and there are, sort of ideas in people's minds, just sort of societal expectations about, like, who's funny. People think guys are funnier for some reason, or people expect that magicians are male, and so... maybe that means female magicians aren't as successful. So,
I find it interesting that we're intrigued with witches, but not with female magicians. Which I don't know. I thought there must be a connection here that we want to write novels about witches, but we don't want to. I guess people don't want to see a female magician, or maybe they don't want to become magicians. I don't know. It sort of felt like the Vanna White complex. Where
just a little bit,
where the woman that was, if she was a part of the show, she was just presenting the letters or presenting the magic instead of being a part of the magic, and I don't know, maybe that's just based on social norms or what we.
Well, I know the people that I know, the female performers that I know that know magic tricks or know aspects of magic. I don't think would identify themselves as magicians. Like I know a lot of female clowns who do magic tricks and do illusions and that kind of thing, but that's only part of what they do as part of their act or part of their performance of some kind. So I wondered, I don't remember if the article touched on that a whole lot as far as like performance identity and what you would consider yourself, what you call yourself on the billboard or on the marquee or something. But I don't know any performers, male or female, who would identify themselves as magicians, but magic is part of some people's acts or some people's performance.
Yeah, that's interesting. That maybe like even females who are interested in magic, like those crazy females who are interested in math and science, maybe just like identify themselves.
Been to this campus? Whoever wrote this article?
Ashley Fetters. So that's interesting that maybe people just define it as something else.
Yeah.
I did some research. I went on Amazon and I looked at magic kits in toys and games, and for every 9 magic kits, there was a little boy on the cover of the magic kit, doing his thing, and there was one magic kit with a girl on the cover, and it was called My Fairy Magic Kit.
It was a big pink box.
So I think even Hasbro is breeding male
Hasbro.
magicians
Okay.
from. Well, not Hasbro. Sorry to you, Hasbro, who are watching.
Right.
I'm sorry,
but it
Hasbro.
does. I mean, it does matter like what girls see as role models. I had my friend's 3-year-old said to her recently when they were in the aisle at Target. She was like, "Mom, none of these superheroes are girls. I can't be a superhero anymore." Now she doesn't want to wear a superhero cape. It's so upsetting. She's having this crisis as a 3-year-old because of what toys are available in the Target aisle and this sort of stuff. So it's a really big influence.
Well,
That's depressing. Okay, so
superhero cape got me. On a lighter note, Kat, why don't you tell us about what's happening in the world of TV and the man?
So in the world of TV, women and minorities as well are apparently vastly underrepresented in the world of TV writing. This article doesn't actually talk a lot about doesn't go into opinions about it. It's a lot of just facts and figures, and some of them actually show that things are improving since about 10 years ago. In the 99-2000 season, minority writers' share of TV employment was 7.5%, and last season it was 15.6%, which, it doubled, which is pretty good. At the same time, the percentage of women writers increased from 25% to 30.5%. Something that I found which to me actually doesn't seem that bad until there was another fact, which was not right, until there was another fact that said that at the rate that this is growing, it would take 42 years until minority and women writers had the same percentage as white male writers in the TV writing industry.
Or it's even until it reaches their percentage of the population. It's not even equal. It's just like
until
representative.
right, which is kind of astonishing. And so the thesis that this article presents is that because of this, there are fewer and fewer roles on TV for minorities and for women. So what do you guys think about this?
Both of these articles concerning, female work, are they asking the question, are females applying to these jobs? Are they trying to do these jobs? Or are the businesses not giving the jobs? I mean, are there females out there that want to be magicians?
Are there women actively being passed up
right.
or minorities being passed up for white males?
Are there women that want to be television screenwriters and aren't getting the job? Or are they just
not applying.
I think with every sort of problem like this, I mean, we've talked about this before, like the inequality is it's like a moving walkway, right? So if you're not actively walking the other way, you're going to be carried along by it. These assumptions that people have, I mean, there aren't a lot of television executives who are saying, no, we need fewer women, fewer minorities in my writing room, but whatever these deeply ingrained ways of thinking are, is, when you see two resumes and they're exactly the same and one has a woman's name on it and one has a man's name on it, or you talk to someone like, real estate people talk to people on the phone and they hear someone who they think sounds black and they hear someone who they think sounds white, all other things being equal, people will give preference to the person who is like them. And it's not that people are intentionally making these decisions saying, I'm a racist, I'm gonna, but it's these invisible forces. Like if you assume that all of these people are, equal and trying to get ahead, and there's these reasons we can't, explain why they haven't, then there must be some invisible force at work. Like, racism, say, that is preventing, those things from being equal. So I'm not saying that people are intentionally doing this. I think there are these really ingrained ways of thinking.
And I also think that those two things aren't mutually exclusive. That because there aren't as many women writers or minority writers, that women and minorities maybe don't see this as much of a valid, career for them to pursue, and so they don't apply. So I think it's some of one hand and some of the other. There's no way to really tell which one it is, and I think it's both. They're both kind of reasons that this is happening.
So this invisible racism or invisible prejudice. My name is Taylor, so I have a unisex name, so people throw me out of a pile because without really thinking about it. My name in a resume next to a guy named Charles, they're like, Taylor's probably a girl. You think they do that?
Possibly. I mean,
I don't think they say that.
No, nobody says that in their head.
It's an
but
unconscious.
Right, but when you do studies, people think, oh, this there's something about even when you just look at gender studies, people think that men are more confident or more qualified, even if their resume does not reflect that. Or even if there are differences in the resume, and like there's just like these things that you learn as children or you learn in society, and it's not. I mean, I don't think that anyone is saying, "Oh, that's a girly name. Out goes the resume," or fewer people are saying that.
Right. True.
But I think it's this unconscious bias that's societal, and that's the idea of like the moving walkway, that like these things happen and no one like there's not necessarily people trying to keep you down, but it does happen, and so you have to be conscious about like fighting against that, or it'll keep happening, and it'll take another 42 years at this rate.
Apparently, yeah.
Yeah, it's something much smaller, which maybe we can't really measure on. But there was another article that showed up on the Green Page this week about looking at the bigger picture. It was called I believe the rise of the creative class. Why don't you tell us about that?
Sure. Okay, so this article is called The Rise of Creative Class. It's on bigthing.com, written by Jonathan Fowler and Elizabeth Rod. Basically, in 2002, Richard Florida published a book called Rise of the Creative Class, and then the book was re-released 10 years later, and a critic named Kotkin, his last name is Kotkin, considered changing or wanted to rename the book The Rise and Fall of the Creative Class. And he said, your theories, Richard Florida, the guy who wrote this book, didn't actually happen. The creative class didn't help the economy, and that's the whole purpose of this, was that the creative class would stimulate the economy, and 10 years later it hadn't. And the whole article was basically a fight between Kotkin and Florida. One says, no, it didn't, and Florida says, he pulled a Lee Corso and says, hold on just a minute, or whatever the phrase is. What do you guys think about the creative class helping the economy? And has it done that in the past 10 years?
I think 2002 to 2012, lots of stuff happened. And I think that as powerful and as wonderful as I think the creative class is, and as important as I think it is for society, the creative class is not going to fix the 2008 recession. Like, that was not the fault of the creative class, but it also is not the fault of the creative class that they couldn't fix it. And so I think that saying the creative class hasn't done anything to help the economy isn't looking enough at the rest of the world.
It seems like Kotkin's just a complete naysayer. He just wants to argue with everything that Florida put out there. It was Lee Corso says not so fast.
Okay.
Just in case you
Okay,
know,
good.
it says not so fast.
Okay.
I mean, it happened a decade and a half ago. The huge .com boom that happened in the mid to late 90s totally changed the face of the economy and in this country. So to say that can't happen again, I think is a somewhat limited view. I think it's possible. I don't think it has happened. So in that sense, I guess I agree with Kotkin that it hasn't happened. But whether or not to call that the rise and fall, and to put a stamp on it, to put it to bed only within a decade, I think it's somewhat short-sighted.
But also, I mean, if you actually think about it, the creative class in the last 5 years has become a huge pusher of like Google and Facebook and all of these like tech industries that are now like
Yeah, that's
huge.
the thing I'm confused about. Is I guess I don't know what the creative class is.
Yeah, what's the definition
What's
of
that
that?
mean?
In his video, he names some of the things that they are, and he says he lists all of these careers, entrepreneurs and engineers and
Right.
scientists, but he
Right.
doesn't quite specify.
Yeah, he draws a line at. So it's pretty much creative classes if arts and science. So like if you're not white collar business, or if you're not in the markets, and if you're not manufacturing, you're creative class. So my bigger problem was he's looking to find a definition to something that I don't think needs to be defined. Like, I think this is just a different flavor of an upper middle class. Like, what separates the arts and sciences from everyone else? Like, what makes them so special? Because I think what the critics' main thing was, you were going to predict this was going to happen, and it didn't, so therefore you were wrong. And I kind of agree with the critic on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one statistic he offered was that their unemployment rate was lower, like during the recession, of the 35% or whatever of workers who constitute the creative class, they never went above 5% unemployment in the recession, whereas other industries were closer to 10%. So I don't know that says that they're a driver of the economy. I mean, it might say something about the strength of that segment of the economy, but I agree. I don't know.
Is this the same idea as your moving sidewalk idea, where nothing can really change because we've stopped and we just let it take us, as far as the creative class becoming something large and impactful for the economy? Are we just doing the same thing over and over and over in hopes that something else changes?
No, that's the definition of insanity.
Well, I know.
And I don't think
That's what I'm saying.
There's a fine line between insanity and creativity.
This makes me angry because I think that the creative class is a driver of the economy. And to say that, like, arts and sciences are just, this thing that doesn't really impact anything, and they've stalled, and they don't, like, without arts and sciences, we wouldn't have we wouldn't have an economy. Like, we wouldn't have Google, we wouldn't have Twitter, we wouldn't have all these things that are now, like, the biggest market drivers in, the stock market.
We wouldn't have those. Right, but there's another thing too, right? So, like, at the end of this video, he says, like, the creative class is going to be the solution to this gross inequality. And I think the gross inequality he's referring to is the financial gap between, the upper and lower class, right? So he's saying the creative class, are people that are going to make things, small business owners, artists, entrepreneurs who are going to sort of be creative, because everyone is creative, according to him, right? So some people are stuck in jobs that suck, and they're not. So he's going to say these people are going to create jobs, they're going to create revenue. It's going to be like this amazing thing. My problem with that is, show of hands, who here would say you're a member of the creative class, or based on his definition?
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
So, like,
also at a little
Most
more
people,
Sure.
in the world would raise their hand.
And I think so. We all raise our hand, but we're still part of that gross inequality, right? So, like, they talk about all these, like, cities, right? And so, like, the creative class city on a hill, San Francisco, I can't afford to live there. I'm in the creative class. He's saying the creative class made San Francisco. So, is it, some people are more creative than other people? I don't know.
Some people are more equal than others.
That's what I'm saying. I don't even understand what we're talking about anymore. all right. So we've gotten a little heady. So hope you guys enjoyed what you see. We're on Twitter, so if you use the hashtag NFTRW, let us know what you think. We're trying something new this week, so we're doing little webisodes. So that's it for this webisode. So if you like what you see, tell your friends. If you don't like what you see, tell your enemies. Thanks. We'll see you next time. That was great. So, you guys want to report it now?